these are genuine discussions that we've had, and this is a long-standing conversation that we had amongst ourselves about like things that Biden could have done better. And so like none of that, just because we're disagreeing with each other, that's okay. Like what we're supposed to agree on everything?
No,
like
you
it's a show.
I feel like you gotta, you're like putting this into like a cartoonish caricature every time, where you just make it the most hyperbolic, stupid like criticism that is not what anybody's saying. Like nobody's saying you're just not allowed to disagree with Hutch.
I truly don't understand the criticism. Like
that when it comes to the Vanguard, the reasoning and the motivations behind their criticisms seem a lot more sinister. They are coming from a very different place. Okay. And so when all I'm watching is you agreeing with them the whole time on this criticism that is kind of bull, it comes off as you almost agreeing with like the motivation behind it.
I'm asking Biden's failures, the big one being his decision to run again.
Sure, but that's very different than what it is that we're talking about. So totally scrap that. So we're not talking about the election. We're talking about what it is that he did while he was in office.
There are some ways in which I think Biden's presidency was a failure.
I don't. I think that it's weird for you to say both. That he's like the most successful presidency in your lifetime, and his presidency was a failure.
Oh my God. I didn't know Epstein was there's a semicolon between that. Yo, what up, Tomfoolery? Yo, Thomas Fair, how you doing? You want to say hi? I have like 15 minutes. You want to call in and say hi? We haven't chatted in a while. Sure. Well, let's do Tomfoolery Excellent. Sorry, Tomfoolery gets streamer privileges. But yeah, Tom, just join one of these channels. Say hi.
Yep, doing well. How about you?
Doing well, doing great. I wanted to first talk to you about the Adam and Sitch situation. What did you think? What did you think of that?
Listen to me for a second, okay? Listen. Okay. Open your ears up. Listen.
Okay.
You say if that scenario existed, what Donald Trump was doing would be the correct thing to do. It would not be an authoritarian thing to do. It would be justified. It would be prudent for him to do that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So if Donald Trump believes that is the situation and he is doing the prudent thing, he's not an authoritarian. He's delusional.
Okay, so Hitler wasn't an authoritarian because he actually thought the Jews were coming after them, right? Yes?
I'm not going to litigate World War II, whether or not Hitler was delusional.
I need some consistency here.
Like
I want no, it's not, because it's not bad faith at all. You're saying that just because they believe it's happening that it's no longer authoritarian, and I'm saying that it's
I'm sorry, Sitch.
What happened?
He's making a bad faith argument. I'm not going
to No. Wait. This is not a bad faith argument.
It is a total bad faith argument.
Hold on.
I'm not here to litigate World War II.
Wait.
Bro, you should watch the whole fucking thing. Like, it's actually insane. Like, there's so many parts of it where I'm trying to like explain an idea to him. And it's really infuriating where I start off at the beginning and I'm trying to explain like the whole debate was about whether or not Trump was a fascist, and I'm trying to tell him Trump is like fascism is this like concept that involves like a bunch of different ideas. And so then he's like, okay, so what are all these different ideas? And I'm like, okay, so like first he would have to be like a populist, like ultra nationalist. And he's like, wait, so you're saying anybody who's a populist is a fascist? So Bernie Sanders is a fascist? I'm like, no. And like once we would finally like get through that, then eventually we would move on to the next thing and say like, okay, so now like, authoritarian, that's another thing. He's like, oh, so anytime like Joe Biden signs an executive order, he's an authoritarian? Like, no, dude, what the hell? Like, it's not, or he's and then that makes him a fascist. It was just the same thing over and over. And he had trouble like understanding the simplest parts of how concepts work.
And he kind of like ran away when like, all he had to do was bite the bullet and say, so for the audience who's not aware, he basically took the position that anyone who's delusional can't be authoritarian or something like that, right?
Yes. He said that they couldn't be authoritarian if they're delusional, but then immediately backed off that right away.
And then like got mad when Sitch was trying to push him on like the logic of it. Like, I'm not going to relitigate all of World War II, man.
Yeah. So what he said is
So
he says,
what was going through your mind? Were you like, okay, I'm in the driver's seat now. Like this is fucking embarrassing.
yeah. Well,
What were you thinking?
when he says, they can't be authoritarian if they think they're correct. He says it's not authoritarian if they think they're correct.
They're correct.
Yes. And I said, so you're saying that because Hitler actually thought the Jews were coming after him, then
Which he did.
Yes,
Well,
then he wasn't
and
authoritarian.
he did think. By the way, this is also an argument that I think for the genocide argument, people will say, well, if there's a mixed motive or something, then it can't be genocide if it's not solely just to destroy in whole or in part. But like Hitler viewed the extermination of the Jews as coextensive with his war aims. Like the whole stab in the back theory, it's not just a matter of anti-Semitism that they decided to kill the Jews. They believed in the ideology that it was essential to the war aims to exterminate Jews from Europe after the that the final solution was on offer. So, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you that the mere statement or belief in oneself as being correct can't be enough to say that you're not authoritarian. Like Stalin thought that he was a good person. Hitler thought that he was a good people. Like they all think they're good people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I said. He later, so after this, like he mutes me, okay, and then he leaves the call. Like after he gets in a fight with Sitch, he says, "I'm done with you," and leaves the call. And I didn't know because on your side, you've been on their show. Like you don't see their cameras when you're talking to them. You just see like logos. So when he just turns off his camera and leaves, I don't know that he's gone. So I'm now unmuted for the first time in like 5 minutes, and so I'm now able to talk. And so I just start replying to him, trying to like cool things down, trying to be like, okay, so my bad. I thought that was your position too, but we can move on to the next thing. Because I had like...
He wasn't even there.
Yes, he wasn't even there. I had this massive list of like every action Trump had ever done that like was authoritarian and like had the definition of authoritarian was like legal actions that break your civil liberties or your rights. And like I had all of this stuff prepped, and it was to talk to Adam. Adam was the one who had this like visceral disagreement with this, and then he just left the call. And I think it was like an hour, maybe 45 minutes or an hour into the conversation, he's just gone. And so now I'm left just talking to Sitch, who didn't like have this like as big of a disagreement on whether or not Trump was a fascist. So then Adam goes on to Twitter and writes this big long post saying, just because he says, not everybody's evil just because they do something wrong. And I'm like, bro, you're pivoting like the entire conversation. You were saying that they weren't authoritarian just because they did. Evil, just because, and that they're not authoritarian.
He is very stupid.
Yes.
I just want to say, like, I think he's very dumb.
That's what I was like, bro, you're getting into like 8th grade fucking philosophy, saying that like, oh, well, just because not everybody's malicious when they do things right. Yeah, no duh. Like everybody does things that they think are correct.
But you're
like,
arguing whether it's authoritarian,
yes,
not whether or not they're malicious.
Yes, and so I list like, Mao and like, Mussolini, Hitler, like all of them had motivations that in their head were good and were just, and they were trying to do the right thing. And then he unfollowed me, and I'd like
block you?
Yeah, he didn't block me, I don't think, but I sent him like another message, and I was just like, "Hey man, sorry that went that way. Like, I was excited to get to talk to you. This is the first time I had like a conversation with them, and I was like, hopefully we can have like another conversation in the future." And then he just never replied to me. And I was pissed. And so then everybody started coming out with the clip of him leaving saying, "I'm done with you, Sitch." And they're like, "Tomfoolery just ended the Sitch and Adam show. Like, it's over now." And so when they came back, God, he did came back, and Sitch says like, and Adam's just sitting there pouting the whole time Sitch is talking. And Sitch is just like, Adam thought that Tom was trying to frame him as a Nazi. And that's why he was saying that it was bad faith.
So, but the thing is like, That's their go-to. When they blocked me, or when he blocked me, he was like, "You're lying about us. You're lying about us." Couldn't
Mhm.
identify a single lie, and so what they come back to is like, "You're structurally dishonest. You're just like," and in some ways they get all of the worst traits of the woke people that they are supposed to be crucifying. So on the one hand, they're ultimate cultural and ethical relativists in every respect, right? Like, oh, Hitler, if he thought it, what he was doing is good. So like they go into this kind of postmodernism almost, and also like have to invent these new theories of deceit and being bad faith to basically account for the fact that they have no clear-cut evidence of you being bad faith, because it's not bad faith
Mhm.
to bring up like a Nazi comparison, right, dude? Like, it's cliche sometimes, but sometimes it's like the best comparison because it's like it's the easiest, most stark thing to do. So it's not bad faith inherently. If every time you brought up the Nazis and Hitler, that's necessarily bad faith, then holy shit, like 80% of all political discourse is bad faith. Then,
Well, and
but
even
no,
a
no,
bunch of other
I
people
yeah.
afterwards covered it, and it was in like there were video essays on Adam since then, and almost all of them say like they all play the clip, but they all say something like, you know, Tomfoolery made the stupid decision to use a Hitler analogy or a Hitler comparison,
Who
which is the dumb
cares?
lefty thing to do. And I'm thinking, that's not just a dumb lefty thing to do. This is like the most obvious authoritarian that people know of. Like, if I get into what Mao did, if I get into what Pol Pot did, if I get into what Mussolini did, I guarantee Adam's not going to have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. He's not going to have any idea what we're talking about. So I have to use somebody that like everybody just knows what it is he did.
Yeah. No, I don't have any problem with using that comparison. But more to the point, like to say you're bad faith because you're no one who listens to that conversation where he's saying like whatever he's saying is thinking, oh yeah, Tom is trying to paint him as a Nazi, and it's not a. And in retrospect, that's not a good excuse
Mm-hmm.
to say, well, I thought what he should say is, I thought you were painting me as a Nazi, and I apologize for having that reaction because it was unreasonable in
Bro,
hindsight. Because it is unreasonable in hindsight.
that's what I said. Afterwards, I was like, this was so unreasonable. And I was like trying to be overly fair and like be nice once I thought that he was
Which
still
is
there. And then I was trying to be overly fair when I replied to his Twitter message. Then I was trying to be overly fair when I sent him a DM after he unfriended me. And he still just totally ignored me across the board. And then I just started talking shit about him. Fuck that guy. He's a
what?
fucking bitch,
Yeah,
dude.
fuck him. He's an idiot. Yeah, no, he's a fucking idiot. He's a loser. And I took that kind of approach too, like because I had put out all these threads where before he's like saying I'll never vote for Trump, but then he's like, okay, I'll vote for Trump over Biden because of the black box, and then Joe Biden drops out, and now it's just like Kamala Harris versus the person he said he'd never vote for. I'm like, you're being a hypocrite. You're being inconsistent. And I released a bunch of threads of his own words, and he's like, they bring him on, and I'm trying to build a bridge and be like, okay, guys, I understand you're upset here, like that you feel personally betrayed. Like they tried to act like I had some friendship obligation to them not to like call them out on being hypocrites on the election in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of an election season, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like they're upset that I'm replying to Adam when Adam's like, oh yeah, like Trump is preferable to Biden. Like you're putting your views on Twitter. If you don't want people to engage with your views, your political views as political commentators, maybe just like don't post it. Like
Well, just
you're
to be clear,
political commentators.
you didn't call him a hypocrite either. Like you, and it was getting frustrating because I reviewed you going over this. You never actually
Yeah.
called him a hypocrite. You would go down a line of statements that he made and then finish it off with, if this is the
What's your
case,
explanation?
you
Yeah.
owe people an explanation. Yes, you would say that
Yeah.
every time, and then they kept crying, "You're calling me a hypocrite." And it was like, Pisco never
Yeah,
called
no.
you a fucking hypocrite, bro.
At one point, I did call him a hypocrite when Biden dropped out. When Biden dropped out,
Yes, but that was later.
That was after. Yeah,
Yeah.
initially, I just said you owe an explanation because like, and when I say you owe an explanation, I'm just like, I think it would be correct thing to explain to your audience why you've had this change in position. Like if all of a sudden, if you go months earlier saying I'll never vote for Trump to I would vote for Trump over Biden,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you owe your fucking audience an explanation. Why did you come to that difference in opinion? And I don't know if you caught what he said to Econo Boy. It was so fucking scummy. So Adam goes, I didn't end up voting for Trump. I didn't vote either for Trump or for Harris, even though
Oh
before
my
he was kind of
goodness.
he was dinging Sitch because Sitch said I'm not going to vote because I want to be impartial, but he goes, the reason I didn't vote for Trump is because I didn't want to vote for Trump, have him lose, and then have him claim election fraud, and for me to have to answer for that. I didn't want to be called on it. Like, he literally says that the reason
What
that
the
he
fuck?
didn't vote for Trump is because if he thought Kamala was going to win the election, and so if he voted for Trump and then Trump contested the election, that's something that he didn't want to have to handle and deal with. So it's not about, he recognizes in his mind, I guess, that Trump is preferable to Kamala, but he didn't vote that conviction because he didn't want to get shit.
Yeah, well,
That is
before
literally his mission.
when you were going off on him, there was one day where I like added him on Twitter. This is before him and I had a conversation. Like, we had somewhat of a cordial relationship. We had DMs together. Like, we had a bunch of tweets back and forth. Obviously, he followed me at that point, so like we were fine. And I added him one day and did say like, you know, it is kind of necessary that like you explain at some point what the fuck the problem is here. If you're saying that like Trump is all of these bad things, yet you're voting for him anyways, I think that like you do kind of owe everybody an explanation. And so he says, the problem is that Biden is just too old. And I'm not willing to vote for somebody who is this old. If they had Biden, but a younger version of him that wasn't senile, I would totally be in favor of him. But then later, I'm pretty sure his problem with Kamala was that he was literally just the same, or she was literally just the same thing as Biden. And like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That was your thing. You wanted a younger version of Biden. It doesn't make sense, dude.
And he goes on to say, Kamala physically repulses me. At least Trump is funny. He says,
yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so you'll just invent some new lesser of two evils argument where, and at some point he gave Trump credit. He's like, well, Trump is moving closer to universal healthcare, like a fucking idiot, as though Trump was ever gonna give universal healthcare. He just buys it, like as though that's enough to counteract everything bad that he was saying about Trump before. So no, I very much appreciated that. It was one of the funniest things ever. When you fucking raffle stomped him there. But yeah, I just wanted to say.
Well, yeah, I would highly recommend the rest of it, because there are so many parts where he like gives some of the most insane analogies. Like when we're talking about authoritarianism, and we're saying that like these are things that like break the law and break your like civil liberties or rights that are like direct like orders from somebody, that this is authoritarianism. And he kept saying, so speeding is authoritarian because you're breaking the law. I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, no, that's not it's not authoritarian.
And they tried to do the Conaboy too, where for the term socialism and the whole socialism arc, but yeah, fucking miss me with their it's the same thing Rob Noor does, where he kind of lives in this this Sorties paradox situation where, because you can't perfectly define when a puddle becomes a lake, and because you can't define exactly when authoritarianism starts and when like normal law begin, like you can't put a precise pin on it. There are easy cases and there are hard cases. Like easy cases trying to illegally overturn the election, right? Like, or trying to violate rights in a very clear way, right? So
it's low-key
wager. Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
well, I do want to say respect for Sitch, because he not only defended the point and like made it clear that I was not being bad faith, but then even afterwards when they came back and he said that like, you know, Adam thinks that Tom was trying to frame him as a Nazi, he kept saying, but we disagree on this. Like, you know, Adam feels this way. We have a disagreement on whether or not that's what was happening. So, yeah, I still have respect for Sitch for the way that he handled it. But
fuck Sitch.
Surprising.
I don't like to do that. I think Sitch is highly overrated, and I think he's a fucking idiot too. But I respect that you respect him, and I'll leave it there. But I want to give you an opportunity. If you have any thoughts, concerns, or we don't always get the chance to chat, but I always enjoy it.
Damn, no, I haven't seen much. I watched you in Counterpoints talk after your conversation with Destiny. I did feel like after I said, I don't know if you saw any of my coverage, but like obviously I have like a lot of problems with you know, Marxists and Marxist Leninists and shit like this, but I did feel like a lot of it was like kind of unfair towards you, and I definitely felt like, especially after like everything happened with Destiny, I felt like you were like overly charitable and didn't make a lot of content off of him, didn't try to turn around and make like drama content and like milk it or anything, and
Nope.
become a hater
Still
like
have it.
JSTLK or any of the rest of these people. And then Destiny did turn around and start making a bunch of content about you and kind of coming after you. And so yeah, I felt like a lot of it was really unfair, and I
100%. Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. No, like I also have problems with Marcus Leninus, and the entire thing, I think, was an effort to malign me and Econo Boy for positions that we don't hold, and there's zero prescription that has come out of this entire saga about how we should have conducted ourselves differently on that Vanguard conversation. Zero, 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 zero at all. That is actionable and makes sense of the actual conversation, because like the prescription isn't you should have pushed back, we did push back. The prescription isn't you should have been meaner, because people are okay with pushback if even if it's cordial. So it's not the prescription of just be meaner. The prescription isn't bring up communism in a conversation apropos that it's not about communism or people who have those views, because then Hutch would have been lambasted because he was the one who chose the conversation and he's the one who didn't bring up communism. And so there is just zero prescription that came out of that entire saga that is actionable and that's actually able to be fit onto the conversation we had. And so, in my opinion, it's an intentional and malicious campaign to paint me as a Marxist-Leninist, or to paint me that I'm changing who I am or trying to do things I'm not trying to do. So yeah, I think the whole thing was malicious, and I don't actually think that there's anything substantial there. And it coincides with some other good faith conversations that we've had. We've even had conversations, I think, about either the Ethan Klein case or the Hassan, or maybe even both. Situation. Those are good faith disagreements, and they're not on the basis of being pro-communism. Like, if anything, I'm being pro-liberal by trying to protect freedom of speech even more.
Yeah.
With respect to viewpoint discrimination. So it's not on the grounds that like I want to institute a Marxist-Leninist revolution. And so the whole thing, the reason I was so angry is because I think I identified correctly that there was no substantive disagreement. That this was all about personalities and about streamers, and there's no, and I'm going to repeat this again until the end of time, no actionable prescription with respect to the Vanguard conversation that makes sense of the actual critique. None.
Okay, well, I'll say, all right. I thought that when it came to your disagreement with Hutch, that like you said a number of times that like you disagreed with him on just like the overall, or sorry, you agreed with him on the overall. Sorry, hold on. You agreed with him on the overall position, or disagreed with him on the overall position. You agreed with him on like the logic to get
I agreed
there.
on Manchin point. I agree on student loans. I agree on that Biden had good policies. I disagree. The only respect in which I agree with the Vanguard is, in general, I think Biden could have done more things to seem like he was giving a shit more.
Correct.
That's the broad claim, right? That's it.
I think that that's like totally possible. But then once you talked to Hutch about this, and you said that you were that your position was that he should have called out Cinema and tried to debate her, and that's what you meant by he should have used the bully pulpit more. That just seems like a hardcore stretch. Like that seems like a ridiculous like critique to say he should have done this more. What should he have done? Called her out and debated her. Like that seems kind of wild.
So what I said was that there are things that Biden could have done had he been equipped to push his agenda more, and one of those things might be, let's actually have a conversation. I'm willing to go on podcasts to discuss these. I gave a bunch of examples of things that you could do to go and try to sell it to the American people, like Trump tries to do, and he's effective at shifting the narrative so that his people agree with him and get people to support him.
I think we all agree that Biden wasn't capable of those things. Like, he wouldn't be good at debating. He wouldn't be good at going on shows and talking. He wouldn't be good at those things.
That's its own issue. I mean, that's its own issue in terms of like his own competency, and that gets to the critique that Biden.
But that's part of what he ought to have done, because if he's not good at using the bully pulpit in this way and being persuasive, what he's good at is using his relationships behind the scenes. That's not
Hutch's argument. Hutch's argument isn't that Biden is incapable of doing these things; is that he shouldn't have done those things, even if he were capable of it. And even if not, they should have employed surrogates to that effect, effective surrogates. And you don't need to have Biden himself, but you could have people being like, this is why it's important to have this, and that. And it's not crazy, because the Biden administration itself is acknowledging that it was unable to sell its policies and unable to sell it to the American people. They themselves recognize it. They tried to have the Bidenomics thing, and it wasn't working. So it's not something crazy to be like, they needed to have another PR strategy. And that PR strategy might have been leveling with the American people. Like, look at what Gavin Newsom is doing right now. Gavin Newsom is going on podcasts, is going on shows. Like, so you could say that Biden wasn't capable of doing that stuff, but then do stuff that you are capable of doing.
What does
or
that
have
mean that
surrogates who are
Biden
doing the same exact stuff.
wasn't Bidenomics when he was trying to like print more money in order to spend more money to help the inflation? And you said,
No, it was with respect to his overall economic strategy of investing in America, investing in domestic labor, that kind of stuff, and yeah, having some measures to address inflation through the Federal Reserve. And
when you say it wasn't working, you're
you know,
just saying that like
activating-
people didn't know that
no,
it was
the
working.
PR, no,
Yeah.
the PR wasn't working.
Okay,
It wasn't
yeah.
effective
They
PR
were really
strategy.
bad at claiming their
So all-
W's, for sure. I totally agree with that. They were
Not just
horrible
claiming
at
their W's,
claiming their
like,
W's.
and pushing their agenda in a way that resonated with the American people. That's all the point is. And I said some examples of things that you could do if you were capable of doing it, or have surrogates to do, is to go on, shows that people are watching and actually try to sell it to the American people. To go and have a conversation on CNN and be like, I encourage, I want to have a conversation about why this is really important. It's really important that we have X, Y, Z. I wouldn't do it on $50 minimum wage because to me that's not the most important policy item. But it's a broad point. It's just saying that Biden and his administration could have done more to sell his agenda. And both
Yeah,
his
sure.
agenda
I
retrospective-
agree. I agree with that. I just it felt like once you got to like the crux of the argument with Hutch, it turned into like he should have
Well, hang on.
debated them more.
We'll
But
interest
that's
a little bit.
yeah.
So hang on a second. Could Biden or the administration have utilized in a significant way? I'm not just. Do you think it was a big miss of the administration and Biden himself that they weren't effectuating their policies in terms of their PR campaign? And do you think that there are reasonable steps that could have taken, for example, like doing more interviews, doing more Q&As, if not Biden, some surrogates who could actually attract attention, who are actually fucking cool, or who, using the governors or using allies in Congress to do more things? Do you think that was a big miss by the administration?
I think that they got a lot done. So the way that Vanguard was
Not what I
making it
asked. I
sound.
didn't-
Well,
I
hold on.
didn't
Well,
ask-
hold on.
I didn't
Hold
ask
on.
if they got well done.
Hold on. The Vanguard was making it sound as though they weren't getting policies
I'm not asking
done.
that, though.
Hold on.
We're not talking about that.
Hold on. They were making it sound like they weren't getting things done, but I don't think that they had trouble that they were getting things done, but I do think that they had trouble claiming their wins, and that they should have done these things to claim their wins a lot more. Donald Trump claims everybody else's wins. He claims Obama's wins. He claims Biden's wins. He says they were all his, and then everything that he did that was bad, he blames on Biden and Obama and Kamala. But they don't even like do a good job at claiming their wins. Well, I'm saying that I don't. I think that your question has like a bunch of parsing in it, and I'm trying to parse what parts of this that I actually.
So let's do it individually. So both retrospectively and prospectively, that is to say, both selling their wins and accomplishments, but also pushing for wins that they could have gotten. Do you think that Biden? This is just a simple point. We haven't gotten to the specifics yet. Biden and his administration left things on the table. We're gonna narrow. We're gonna get more narrow.
Sure. Yes, they
So
left some
both
things
in
on the
terms
table.
of. So I just want to be very, very clear. Both in terms of claiming wins and things that they could have, that maybe they could have gotten, or that they didn't look like they were giving a shit for, even if they couldn't get it, for purposes of dragging Poland along and looking like they're giving a shit. Do you understand what I'm saying? So like,
Yes.
both in terms of optical wins that they did not achieve, the opportunity cost, and also in terms of claiming wins that they actually did achieve. So in both those senses, I think that they left things on the table for sure. And Biden and the administration itself acknowledges that. They acknowledge that. And I don't think that it's crazy to suggest that a president who, by the end of his term, like wasn't even having cabinet meetings, like once a year, that wasn't fully engaged in the domestic policy front after like a year or two, that he could have done more, even himself. And if you think that he couldn't have done more, then you're saying he shouldn't have been president. Or that
Well, no,
he,
I think that like we can always say that somebody could have done more, but I don't think that
significantly more.
Okay, I think that it was a very successful presidency. I think Biden had a
That's
great
not what I'm
presidency,
asking.
and I think that
Holy
no. But hold on. But I'm saying that if you have a presidency that actually is very effective and very efficient in getting things done, then I think that it's a weird criticism afterwards to be like, oh, they didn't do more. Like, could they have done more? Yes, that's always something that you can say, but Is it something that makes it to where like we would think less of their
Oh, it was
presidency?
a big
Not
miss.
to me.
Yeah, no, no, I think much less of the presidency, because the key part of the presidency, the big promise that he broke, and which makes it, unfortunately, even though I think he's the best president we've had in my lifetime, a failure of a presidency, is to restore the soul of this country, and that is to prevent Trump from winning again. And they did not do
Mhm.
what they needed to do to protect the country from that. And that's a huge fuck up. That is a huge fuck up. And this election was close. The 2024 election was close. Even though Trump won the popular vote, the margin was not like, it wasn't a landslide victory by any means. And I think it's fatalistic to say that there's nothing that the administration could have done differently to better protect the country from Trump returning. On the specifics of individual policies, I acknowledge that there's a 50-50 Senate and the margins are super slow, and you only have that 50-50, or you don't have the House for 2 years. What I'm talking about are like wins that make you even have the approval of the Democratic Party by and large. And like even among Democrats, Biden's approval was lagging behind what it should have been.
Well, when it comes to like
And
what Trump being capable of winning, I think that a lot of that is more attached to the crimes that he was charged with. And so, do you think that if they knew that this would have helped Trump win later on instead of hurting him, do you think it would have been better for them to just not go after him at all and not try to charge him with all of these crimes?
I don't think Biden was in control of that decision, so I don't know why it's relevant.
Well, then I
The answer-
don't
the
blame
answer to that question is no.
Biden
I don't-
very
I don't
much
think
for
there's
Trump winning again.
Really? You think that Biden's decision to run again should not factor into whether or not we blame him for Trump?
Okay,
winning?
sorry, fair enough. Yes, okay, yes, him dropping out late definitely is a huge L. Yes.
Yeah, because of his ego and because of other things. But it's not just on that front. Like the fact that we were in such a hole at all, right? The fact that we were in that he was so historically unpopular. Part of it absolutely relates to fundamentals on the ground. That is to say, inflation and the rest of it. But it also relates to the administration's inability to communicate with the American people. That's just a fact. Like if you talk to anybody, and not us, because we're like watching his Twitter and we're like retweeting Biden and saying, Biden base, all that shit. But if you talk to the normal American, they're like, they're not getting the message. They just were not getting the message. And in light of that, I think it's not like a crazy thing to suggest the Biden administration should have done more to signal that it gave a shit and understood the problems of the American people.
To an
That is
extent,
not
but I
some
also
crazy
think
thing
that
to
like
say.
anytime that somebody went out, like Mayor Pete or Kamala or anybody went out and gave a speech or talked about things on a network or anything, the whole like left-wing media just shit on them and talked about how dumb they were and how horrible they were. And I think that even when it comes to, you're saying, Biden's horrible, how much everybody didn't like him, but I think
why
that
are
a
we
lot
talking about
because
other
hold
people?
on.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying that I think that when a lot of people talk about like how much they didn't like his presidency or how low his ratings were, that a lot of this has to do with like the anti-establishment sort of ideals that no matter what, because even Donald Trump, right after beating Kamala, still ends up with even lower approval ratings. And I think that a lot of the things that you're blaming on his inability to get legislation passed or things like that, I don't think that has nearly as much to do with it as all of these other things do.
So I'm not sold that leftist online influence was a decisive role in Biden's unpopularity. But even if I was, I'm not assessing it, right? So like, fuck those leftists who were like wrong to the extent that they were wrong or they were misleading about stuff. Like, I'm just not assessing the leftist culpability when I'm making a criticism specifically about Biden. I very well might have criticisms of the leftists, and trust me, I did, and trust me, I debated these people. Like,
No, I know
Sitch
you
is
do.
more of a Adam is Atlantic centrist, but like, I view that as just not topical. Like when I'm saying, what did the Biden administration fail at? Did they fail in some way? A different question is, well, were they also fucked over by other things like, leftists online? and maybe they were, but I'm not
Right, but
assessing whether leftists ultimately
I
were.
understand you're saying that, but I'm saying that you're connecting this causal action to the outcome, and I'm saying I have a very different causal action that connects to the outcome, that I believe these other things were actually fine, and that if we had a difference within the media and difference within like how populous the country was right now, that I think we would have had very
You have
different
the media
outcomes.
you have it. It's kind of like you know, you play the game that's before you, right? Like, and you see that with Gavin Newsom right now, that you can say all you want is like, I don't want a president to have to be a fucking PR guy. Well, that's the job now.
Yeah.
It's like fucking stupid to say the president shouldn't have to do it. That's so dumb. Like, we just live in an
Yeah,
era
sure.
in which the presidency is maybe even more than 50% PR, and it's failure. Like, what we're seeing in the terms of the PR side of it didn't work, and that's all I'm saying. Like, they should have tried other things. For example, being more present in, and this is something that no one even disagrees with, like being more present in alternative media spaces, going and challenging people. If you can't, by the way, if you can't have Biden do it because he's too old, having some, like, designating someone to be like your go-to spokesperson to go beat up on all these people, like send Pete, get Pete to quit being fucking mayor or whatever, and send him to all these podcasts. Do something to engage with the voter, in a way that's different and more effective and more pronounced, and a way to make it seem like you're savvy, like what Gavin Newsom is doing right now. Now, obviously, we have a lot of knowledge in hindsight, and so I'm not doubting that there's like a bit of hindsight bias playing here, but like, even at the time, there were op-eds and papers and discussions about how the Biden administration signaling wasn't working, and like, we had debates about that, about, is there a vibe session, is there not a vibe session? So like, this was not just something in retrospect, it's also something that we were talking about in real time. We were discussing the ways in which Biden was failing in terms of the outreach, and I think that that's evident. And if Biden couldn't be as president as Trump is now because of his cognitive health, then that is something that, like, that is fucking really scary. That's really bad. If the president is unable, because he is not fit to do these kinds of interviews, to run the kind of media campaign that is necessary to be a successful president, then part of that Vanguard critique goes through. If you're incapable of doing that job, which is to say the media job, that's on you too. And to the extent that that's part of the Vanguard critique, and I understand it to be part of the Vanguard critique, I agree with it.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's also, by the way, that's not socialism. It's not communism. It's, even if you disagree with me in good faith, all we're talking about here are tactics to get Biden's own agenda passed. And so, at least, could you acknowledge, I'm sure you will, that none of what we're talking about here is like communism versus socialism versus liberalism.
No,
What
of
we're
course
talking about
not.
here
It's
are strategy.
Of course, but so a couple of things. One, I do feel like once we start saying that like the Biden administration failed because they weren't getting legislation through, that I do think we're splitting hairs a little bit at that point. But second, I think that people, when they disagree with what it is that you're saying, right? So they hear you arguing with people and they disagree with your conclusion, and then it's over and over when you're talking to Vanguard, talking about Hassan, talking about Ethan, talking about a bunch of people that they may disagree with ideologically, but they're also disagreeing with them on the substance. And then they keep seeing you seemingly stretching in a direction that they think doesn't make sense. It just starts to seem as though there's a stretch to align with these people, and it's just a pattern recognition.
But yeah, so it's nothing to do with actual policy, right? Because
right.
saying that I think that Hassan was the subject of viewpoint discrimination, that doesn't have anything to do with communism or anything. Saying that I think that Ethan Klein, when he says that he's doing this to protect the React community from lawsuits from Sony and Disney, that's fucking stupid and dumb. Which, by the way, when I push people, most people agree that it's fucking dumb rationale. What they say is like, oh, he didn't, it's not really, even Mantis, right? Mantis is like, yeah, I agree with you. He lied about that. So like, these are all positions that are agnostic as to one's partisan leaning. I can tell you firsthand that most of my audience are libs. They're not fucking lefties. And, I've lost hundreds of subs and a ton of support because of my positions, because I say what I believe, and not that I like whatever. You guys can go wherever you want, but I'm certainly not interested in. There's not financial motivation. If I were interested in pure financial motivation, I would read the fucking room and make another shit on Hassan video and make another Ethan Glaze video. That's what I would do if I was just purely in the business of making money. But the thing is, I have beliefs and I stand on them. Like I just do. And none of those, you can say, oh, you aligned with, I don't even know, like, is the copyright case because of denims? I said the copyright case was strong in terms of the infringement. I still think that. None of my positions have changed on that. I've debated it for anyone who wants to talk about it.
Sure.
Same thing on the global entry.
I'll say, I have said, I think it is optics. I think it is optics, and I think it's let me. Yes, hold on.
This last part. What you're saying there confirms everything I'm saying.
Yes, I said at the beginning that I thought it was unfair. Yes,
all
I said at the beginning I thought it was unfair. That I think that a lot of it had to do with the fact that like you being close with Destiny or being considered a Destiny orbiter to a lot of people meant that you guys agreed on all of these things. But whenever you're talking to Destiny, you guys are fighting. You guys are debating these things. Like DGG was constantly like hating on you on how much they got mad when you would go on and disagree with them. And so yes.
By the way, I was in favor of packing the court initially.
Yes.
I was in terms of self-defense. Like, let's just be real here. I'm not someone to just fucking take the opinion of whatever I think is going to make me the most friends.
Bro, when you first went on and disagreed with Destiny about the insurrection, I was on your side and like was totally with you there, and I couldn't stand DGG like running around talking about how crazy you were calling it an insurrection. So yeah, it was weird later for him and you to kind of act like I didn't think it was an insurrection, but yes, I think it is optical in the way that these things.
Well, I think I apologized to you for I forget what it was. I apologize for something.
You did. There's a bunch of weirdos who run around saying that like we all had like this substantial disagreement at the end, but we didn't. It was just a misunderstanding of what my position was. So, but yeah, I think that like a lot of that is just optics, where a lot of people felt like you guys agreed on a lot more, and then now they're starting to realize that that may not be the case.
No, but I don't think that. Again, I want to stress, I don't think that there's a lot of substantive disagreement at all. Like, identify some, like, to the extent that there's substantive disagreement, it's like, was Ethan Klein being forthright about this thing about Sony Disney? Is it a problem if Hassan has his global entry revoked or is detained?
Well, I've had these arguments with you. And I feel like I have substantive disagreements with you on all of these things. We've talked about the Ethan Klein difference. We had
a substantive disagreement.
Yeah,
so what I mean to say is the socialism stuff and the Vanguard conversation.
Yes, no, I agree.
The anger isn't based in these disagreements. The anger is based on who are you aligned with generally from a personality perspective. That's where the anger is.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I said at the beginning, like I thought it was unfair, and I didn't think that this was a lot of it made a whole lot of sense. I do agree with like a lot of the points about like media, but yeah, as far as like actual disagreements on the merits, I think that a lot of people are just doing this like pattern recognition where you're aligning with people that they don't like, and that makes them mad.
Yeah. So as I understand, just I want to. I guess I'll maybe end with this. You don't have, do you, a prescription of how I should have managed that conversation with the Vanguard better? Do you?
I personally feel like they are going to shit on Biden no matter what. Like the fact that they like didn't even know that he got $15 minimum wage federally, or that he got through the what was the other thing they didn't know? It was the
student loan.
Yes, the student loans. They didn't know he did the student loans. Like it felt like they, no matter what, like they were just like in groups where you just shit on him even if he does get the W. And I felt like a lot of it was just splitting hairs. I felt like in the end, like he had an incredibly successful presidency.
We pushed back on that though. Like we pushed back on the student loan thing. We pushed back on the fact that he had successful legislation. We pushed back on the mansion point. So I'm just going to ask you again, like, is there a particular prescription you would have for how Econoboy or Josiah handle that conversation?
No, but I will say that like optically it came off as 5v1, and
this is like bullshit, right? Because like how often am I fucking outnumbered in one of my takes when I'm in a fucking, not just on Tim Pool, but among lib spaces where I have the opinions I have? How often, like, are you, right? Like, you, when you were against a bunch of people like Mudahar and others, I forget what it was. I think it was one of the insurrection conversations, right?
Mhm.
You were outnumbered. Was anyone like, oh, Tom is outnumbered optically? It's bad. Like, no, we never have this fucking standard.
Well,
Where
no,
we have to,
everybody
like,
said that I
be
was a right winger
managing.
afterwards. That was everybody
Okay.
said that I was like
Yes,
an
what I'm
Andrew
saying is no
Wilson
one had
dick suck
sympathy.
and shit like
No-
that because they're acting,
no
they're
one
doing
had
the same
sympathy
thing
for
to you.
you.
They're doing literally the same thing to you, saying that you're on the side
No.
of the Vanguard, just as they're saying that I'm this like MAGA right winger and I'm on the side of Andrew Wilson.
Right. So no one had sympathy for you because you were outnumbered. That's just not a thing that exists. Like, the outnumbering thing is
Sure, I
not
don't
a
know
point
where
to have
that comes
sympathy
from.
with
Okay,
this
I don't know.
community.
You've said a bunch of times like, oh, so you're saying that you don't think I abandoned Hutch, right? I don't know who the fuck ever said you abandoned Hutch. I don't know where that comes from. I have no idea why you
People
keep
did say
asking.
that. Well, no, but you brought up the notion that he seemed outnumbered, and I've heard that too. Like, oh, optically, it seemed like you guys were all shit like Hutch, which is not true based on the actual conversation. But yeah, I'm glad that you agree that that's not a norm that people care about in this space. It's not a norm. It's not a norm that people care about, like, whether you're outnumbered or not, and whether you're having a disagreement. We're just having a disagreement. Like, I'm not in the moment worrying about who on the panel, like, what it looks like to people, and like, I'm just being honest. Like, I'm just responding to things I'm hearing and talking about it and giving my take. So, like, if the prescription would be, consider how people might view one of the panelists as being isolated, like, that's just not something I'm thinking about.
I agree, but also when I know that if I talk to them, not that you didn't do this because I honestly I don't have like the best recollection at this point of every single detail, but I do know that it feels like a lot of times when people are agreeing with them, it comes off as like just a lot of Biden hate. Like they do just nonstop Biden hate and nonstop establishment Dems hate, DNC hate. Like they really hate these groups, and so when people agree with them, it comes off as like helping their ire towards the
Yeah, but this is
establishment.
never a
Dems.
standard. That's like there are a lot of times that people have had conversations with crazy individuals where people are like, yeah, I agree with you on this and not that. I agree with you to this extent and not that.
That
But this
100%
whole,
is
like,
a standard. That is definitely a
optically,
standard.
you should not
Or
agree
we-
with them, even if you do agree.
No,
like,
that
if
is
I
definitely
agree with
a
them on
standard.
something, I'm gonna agree. You know,
That
like,
is
what,
that is like one of the most important points of of platforming is that if you have somebody like Nick Fuentes on, you make it clear that like they are a bad guy. They're somebody that like you have that you have very substantive disagreements with. You think they're a Nazi. Like these things are very important when you platform certain types of people. And right now within like establishment Democrat sorts of circles, we are like very annoyed with these groups of people who we feel are literally ruining our chances at winning electorally.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure that claim is backed empirically, that the notion that these people are ruining the chances electorally. I'm skeptical of that, to say the least. But even if it is true that they are having an outsized electoral effect, I'm not sure why it is the case that the prescription, which is make sure they know you're an enemy, like, why is that good? Why is that the right prescription?
Because when it comes to platforming and actually getting people to like listen to others on your show, if you want to lead your audience in the right direction and in a good direction, that you want to make sure that they're not turning around and going and following these guys because they think, oh, Pisco agrees with these guys, Pisco's on their side, Pisco's one of them.
Yeah, so like, would you say that about, so Aaron is a socialist, a communist. She calls herself a communist. So do you think like I should dedicate the first 5 minutes of every time we do this, like when we basically clown on Anna Kasparian and TYT and Patrick Bet David for 50% of the show, like surely your prescription would be stop the show with her?
No, again, I'm not saying don't like don't do shows with people like this or anything. You have been open and honest about the fact that you are not like a communist and that you don't agree with socialism and Marxism and crap like that. So I don't think I think that you've been open and honest about this sort of thing.
Prescription? The prescription is like make it clear that people like Aaron are an enemy, even though she votes Democratic, even though she encourages people to vote for Democrats, even though she works for organizations that promotes Democrats. She had worked for organizations that promoted Democrats, even though she acknowledged publicly that Biden and Kamala were the people you needed to vote for.
No, because you don't have an ideological drive to hurt Democrats, to hurt the DNC, whereas they do. And so I'm saying that it will come off as
Aaron
though
doesn't.
No. No, but the Vanguard does. And so if I'm just sitting there with somebody who's a groiper and the whole time they're talking about how much like white people get shit and white people are always, everybody's mean to them and people are being oppressive. And the whole time I'm like, yeah, I've seen a lot of videos of like black people just randomly coming up and beating up white people in the airports. And, you know, yeah, it's true. I've seen some of this stuff. It's crazy. Like, sure, those things happen. I want to make clear that like, I'm not running around saying that white people are oppressed or anything like this.
Yeah, like I've seen some tweets of the Vanguard of like them making fun of or doing like a gay joke of Pete Buttigieg maybe, but I just saw Gavin Newsom do a gay joke of some guy that they were reclining on. I don't know if you saw that earlier in the show, but Gavin Newsom like told this Trump rapper like go back to Grindr. So I'm hope you're not saying that we have like a principled position against gay jokes. Like I wouldn't attack Pete Buttigieg if I were them because I think Pete Buttigieg is largely based. I wouldn't have gone as hard against AOC for her vote or whatever, for all these things. But like in general, these people voted for Biden and Kamala. Like, and even if you think these guys are like destroying the odds of Democrats winning, people like these, like, why shouldn't we use their platforms to try to convert some audiences?
Again, I never said don't talk to them. I didn't say this.
So then what's the prescription in the conversation? What did you want me to do in that conversation to fulfill what standard did I not fulfill is what I'm asking in that conversation specifically.
As I said, I didn't say that there was a standard that you didn't fill. I'm saying that optically, this is why people come to these conclusions, is because this is what it looks like to folks. And so I do think that, like,
I think that there's another reason why people come to that.
You're arguing that this is never a standard, and that's what I'm arguing against.
I think they're being fed some pack of lies and bullshit. That's what I think is that they're coming to this conclusion. And also because of this whole kind of associational guilt by association type thing. But I don't think it has anything to do with the conversation that actually occurred.
So you're saying you're a victim. That's what you're saying. And you're a victim, and there's a psyop.
Well, 100%. But
I'm just kidding.
Listen. I just want to say.
I'm just kidding.
Also, I had a separate conversation with the Vanguard before all this. Like a couple months before this conversation even happened, I had to sit down with the Vanguard. No one gave a shit. Literally, no one gave a shit.
You had a lot of agreements with them. I didn't see this, so I don't know.
Yeah, we were just shitting on Trump the whole time. We were shitting on Trump about how horrible he is, about Kilmar, about this and that. Like, we were just shitting on Trump basically 90% of the time.
Well, sure, shitting on Trump is fine. I can sit with Nick Fuentes and shit on Trump as well, but I wouldn't, like, I'm talking about like some of the arguments against Joe Biden, against DNC people that like that's.
But that's what I mean. If the prescription is to bring up someone's communism when you talk to communists, to be like communists are like Nazis, then Hutch is subject to that as well, but he wasn't criticized because we didn't talk about communism.
Well, okay, from what I saw, I think people were saying that like the panelists.
You should have brought up communism. Like that's.
I think that they were saying that it was you and I think that they grouped all of you together and you were the one who just happened to go out and fight against it the most.
What? Say that one more time?
From what I saw, it was most everybody grouping all of you guys together, you, Econo Boy, Josiah, and saying that like it was a 5-on-1, and then you were the one who just happened to go out and fight against this the most.
No, so basically, there was a widespread accusation that we were turning socialist. People can try to deny it now.
Right, but you just said that they weren't criticizing them the way that they were criticizing you, and I'm saying
they weren't criticizing. No. They weren't criticizing. No, what I said was, if the prescription is, we'll bring up their communism.
Well, I didn't say that. Yeah.
No, but if that, because you said like you have a self-standing duty, just like for Nick Fuentes. Like, what kind of monster would I be if I talked to Nick Fuentes and didn't bring up his anti-Semitism? Right. That's sort of what you're suggesting, right?
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah,
But like,
so
I think in this case, it would be that you
the
disagree that
one-to-one
like you think
comparison.
that the Biden presidency was the most like you know effective and efficient presidency in your lifetime,
No, but
and
surely
that
you're not
you
comparing
think
that. That is not the comparison to Nick Fuentes. Is like, so what you're suggesting is that there's a self-standing duty if you're going to talk to Nick Fuentes to make the audience aware that like you
Well, I said
don't
before
stand in
the
favor
comparison
of.
would be that you don't think white people are oppressed. Like that would have been the comparison.
Okay, but you're surely not comparing that to their views on Biden, right? So what is the self-standing odious set of beliefs, which is one-to-one with Nick Fuentes anti-Semitism? Surely it's not like, well, we disagree with Biden on Israel, or we disagree with Biden on
Maybe this is my
like
media
his tactics.
sphere. Okay, so like the people that I'm fighting with are people on TikTok, and they are a lot of like very populist leftists who are constantly just like hardcore hating on Kamala and on Biden and talking about how horrible they are. I'm nonstop fighting with people who are saying that nobody should have voted for any of them, that like they were all pro genocide. Like these are the people that I'm fighting with pretty consistently. And when I watch the Vanguard, these are the types of like things that they say, though I know they also ended up voting for Kamala as well. I do think that like they fall into this bucket that really hurts Democrats. And when I think of what we have as a responsibility as like a media sphere on the left, I think that we ought to be pumping up and claiming the W's and making sure that like when we get wins, we're claiming those wins. And I think that they harm that. I think that they hurt that a lot.
No, okay, no. But what I'm asking you is like, you seem to say that there was a self-standing duty when there's certain types of people with certain types of noxious beliefs that failure to bring up a certain and to challenge on a certain type of belief can be its own form of harm. So like you wouldn't just go on a stream with Nick Fuentes, just collectively shit on Trump in a congenial fashion, right? Because you that would be wrong because you don't want to pretend as though Nick Fuentes is like a person you should hang out with.
Yeah, but like
right?
I said, you already said that like you don't agree with socialism, you don't agree with communism. Like you are open and honest and said this thing a number of times. So yeah, I think like I could just say like, yeah, I'm not like a white nationalist. I think that like this is bad, or you guys are like kind of Nazis, and then continue from there.
There are
But
people like Michael Tracy, for example, who like I will never vote for one of the major parties because I just on foreign policy I'm so different than these other parties, and so I'm not going to vote for them. And they're so obnoxious about their views on like electoralism. But when I brought on Michael Tracy to talk about the Epstein stuff, I didn't like grill him on his anti-electoralism ways, right? Like, and he basically says that he wouldn't vote for any of the major parties. He
yeah,
thinks that there's no big difference between them on foreign policy, and that's what he cares about.
I
I didn't grill him on it.
yeah, I'm not going to do this on like every little thing, right? Like if somebody thinks that Biden, that the you know, if they think that the border bill was bullshit, like I'm not going to say like, well, you know, if they have some sort of disagreement with him whatsoever, you need to make sure that you bring this up every single time you talk to them and get the, you know, clear the air. Like that's not what I'm saying. It's not every
Yeah, so
little
like,
thing.
but basically, I think I agree with you that there's like certain kinds of figures that they're so like if I had Steve Bannon on, or Charlie Kirk on, or one of these MAGA figures, and basically just shot the shit without there being like pushback, I would feel bad about that for sure. Like when Jank went and did that, I just don't put Vanguard in that same category as Nick Fuentes or Steve Bannon or Charlie Kirk.
Okay. Yeah, look, I'll be honest. I don't know as much about them, but the little bit that I've watched of them has been just them shitting on Democrats. Like every time I've watched them, maybe 5 or 6 times, it's all just been shitting on Democrats. And
do you remember the Talibots discourse?
Yeah.
I mean, Talibots is someone who didn't even vote for fucking Kamala.
Right.
You know, like, but you know, every time I get any kind of prescription, it's like, make sure that people are aware that you stand in opposition to like, do you think anyone gets
Wait,
the impression
they held that position with Talibots?
Well, no, I'm just saying Talibots example is someone who's like generally welcome. No one gets shit on for like hanging out with Talibots, really, except
Yeah,
for
but
leftists
Talibots
who are like,
isn't like a big public figure that people are thinking you're like platforming in some sort of way. Like
Okay.
doing call-ins is very different as well.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is like, this is a level of nitpicking I think doesn't exist for other individuals, and just to be like a trillion percent clear, there just isn't. I think like there's a ton of people who didn't vote for Kamala or Biden. Another person, by the way, is like Sitch and Adam, who didn't vote for them either. And the kind of like granular, okay, you should be signaling to your audience that you're like opposed to these ideas. Like, no shit, right? Like everyone who knows me knows that I'm so against anti-electoralism. There's no one who could, from my audience, who is going to be hoodwinked or bamboozled into thinking, unless they're like, do have MAGA viewers, into thinking that I agree with anti-electoralism or Marxist-Leninism. No one's going to get that impression. And so to the extent that inoculation of your audience is a sufficient remedy towards being congenial and having and sharing a space and agreeing on stuff, everyone who watches me is aware that like I was a Biden bro, that I stand for Biden, that I pushed voting for Democrats, that I'm super electorally oriented. And so if me making my views clear is sufficient inoculation, then what the fuck is the issue?
Well, I think everybody knows
There's no
that.
issue.
I that's not really. I think that it's a bit more complicated than that because everybody knew that Destiny was this hardcore Democrat as well. Yet him going and like debating Nick Fuentes 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and then going and having chicken and waffles with him was still considered this horrible sin where he was irresponsibly platforming him. And so this isn't you're making it sound like you're the only one who gets nitpicked like this, but I get criticisms like this nonstop as well. So it's not. This is kind of the way that it always works. It's just rare that it applies to the left, and that's where the discourse is starting to head, is that like it's applying to the left and the right now.
But wait a second, because this conversation happens with respect to Myron Gaines too. And with Myron Gaines, it's like, well, my audience knows that my views are counter to Myron Gaines. I assume that's true of Fuentes as well. And I assume that that's true. Like,
but when you talk to them, you're debating them, right? You're not just hanging out with them, right?
No, I understand. No, but like, it's cordial, right? Like, and we did push back on the Vanguard, and to the extent that we didn't push back, or that they didn't utter these views in front of us, like we shouldn't vote, because guess what? That's not their view, because they voted for Kamala. But put that aside, if they were to say that, I'm going to push back, and there's no world in which I wouldn't push back, and my audience knows I'm going to fucking push back. Because they know where I stand on that. And so they've been inoculated. They know my positions. I have a track record to demonstrate that I'm pro-electoralism. And that's it. And like, so really, what's the issue? I go on Tim Pool. People don't have a problem with that because I'm pushing back. If I go and go on breaking points, they bring me on specifically to talk about some legal issue with Trump. I'm going to take that opportunity to talk shit about Trump. No one seems to have a problem with that.
All right, maybe there's look, what I watched of the Vanguard was a 45-minute clip on Hutch's channel that he put out, and for that 45-minute clip, it was mostly you guys versus Hutch, and so that's the clip that I saw. Maybe you guys talked for like maybe 2 hours, and there was a lot more to it that I didn't see. But for the 45 minutes that I saw, that was put out on Hutch's channel. So maybe, you know what? Maybe this is Hutch's fault, and he is irresponsibly platforming you on his channel and misrepresenting you.
But the thing is, like, we're allowed to have these. We're disagreeing on like tactics for Biden, right? So like, you might think I'm stupid on those tactic points, but these are genuine discussions that we've had, and this is a long-standing conversation that we had amongst ourselves about like things that Biden could have done better. And so like, none of that, just because we're disagreeing with each other, that's okay. Like, what we're supposed to agree on everything?
No,
like,
you.
It's a show.
I feel like you're like putting this into like a cartoonish caricature every time, where you just make it the most hyperbolic, stupid like criticism that is not what anybody's saying. Like, nobody's saying you're just not allowed to disagree with Hutch.
I truly don't understand the criticism. Like, so
that when it comes to the Vanguard, the reasoning and the motivations behind their criticisms seem a lot more sinister. They are coming from a very different place. Okay. And so when all I'm watching is you agreeing with them the whole time on this criticism that is kind of bullshit, it comes off as you almost agreeing with like the motivation behind it.
I'm asking for a prescription in the conversation for me to do, not what your impression of the Vanguard is. What should I have done in that conversation? Like, not disagree with Hutch when I disagree with Hutch? Not agree with them when I do agree with them?
I think that one, it would be like important to mention that you just kind of are splitting hairs because you do think that like the Biden presidency was overall a success, and that
Everyone who knows me and watches me knows that. And I did say that his accomplishments were. You can watch the clip. I do say that.
it. Okay, again, when their argument seems to be that this is why his presidency was a failure, which is what they were saying, right?
Well, in the sense of that it led to Trump, it was a failure.
But I don't agree that that's what led to Trump. I think that the fact that Kamala lost by 230,000 votes when Biden dropped out like a couple months before the general election started, I think that was the issue. If she had had the amount of time that Trump had to campaign, I think it would have been much better for her. But she had, yeah.
Biden's failures, the big one being his decision to run again.
Sure, but that's very different than what it is that we're
election.
talking about. So totally scrap that. So we're not talking about the election. We're talking about what it is that he did while he was in office.
There are some ways in which I think Biden's presidency was a failure.
Okay,
I do think that.
Okay, so that's I don't. I think that it's weird for you to say both. That he's like the most successful presidency in your lifetime, and his presidency was a failure.
Oh my God. So I said he's been the best president we've had in my lifetime, but there are aspects of his presidency which were a failure. And one sense in which Biden's presidency was a failure is in the sense of not protecting the soul and restoring the soul of America.
This doesn't even the rhetoric that you're using doesn't even compute to me. That like in some ways his presidency was a failure. No, his presidency was not a failure, but there are some places where he could have done better. Yes, but that is very different than some places where his presidency was a failure.
So when I say in some senses Biden's presidency was a failure, you don't understand what I'm saying?
No, I think that sort of like semantics is incorrect. That like his presidency was not a failure in some ways.
Sorry. When you say that the semantics is a failure, I don't know what you mean by that.
No, I didn't say the semantics is a failure. I'm saying.
Do you understand what I'm saying when I say that in some senses Biden's presidency was a failure?
The problem.
What I'm saying?
The problem is that the argument that we're having is over the fact that they are saying. I understand.
I just asked you a question. Do you know what I asked you just then?
Yes.
I asked you whether you understand the words I'm using. So when I'm using the term,
I do understand the words you're using, and you're straw manning things with the question, and I'm trying to explain how that's not a relevant question. That when what they're pushing with their arguments is that the overall presidency was a failure, and then I say this, and you respond with, "Well, there's some parts that I think in his presidency that were a failure." That is not like that doesn't make sense. They're saying his presidency is a failure. You're saying there's some parts of his presidency that are a failure. It
depends what you mean by his presidency is a failure. That depends what you mean by that. So I understand the presidency was a failure it could be specific to a specific domain. For example, ushering in Trump. If that's what you mean that it was a failure, if what you mean by failure is an overall assessment on how he did as president, I wouldn't agree that the presidency was a failure. But in the sense that it was a failure, in the sense that it led to Trump, I would agree with that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So failure can be with respect to a thing, with respect to a criteria. And if the criteria is overall, was he a good president? I would say I don't agree that his overall that he failed to be a good president. I think he was a good president, the best president in my lifetime, relative to other presidents, right? So, but if what you mean by he was a failure because he failed at a thing, which is to restore the soul of the nation or to prevent Trump from coming into office, and that's what you mean by it, then yes, he was a failure. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I think that is just. I think that's a little too broad brushing.
Biden failed. You could say Biden failed at foreign policy. You could say Biden failed at domestic policy. You say Biden failed when it came to I don't know. You could say he failed with student loans. I would say that it's not his failure. It's other kinds of failures that led to that. You could say Biden failed at PR. You could say Biden. So failure is a concept that isn't just limited to your overall sense of a person or their presidency. It can be more attenuated more limited or narrow. And so there's no problem with me saying, in some senses, Biden's presidency was a failure, notwithstanding the fact that he overall was the best president of my lifetime. You agree there's no contradiction there?
There's not a contradiction. I'm
Okay.
saying that I think like the semantics of it is that to say is a failure is this overall encompassing sort of rhetoric that makes it seem as though the presidency, and so even if you say in some parts his presidency was a failure, that this is this overall encompassing rhetoric that makes it sound like his presidency is a failure. So this is part of what I'm talking about, where I'm saying that like it sounds like agreement with them. It comes off as agreement with them when their motive is to talk about how his entire presidency is a failure. And you're saying that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are some small areas where I think that he failed. These are just drastically different points that
I think it's a humongous
come
area that he
across in the
failed.
conversation.
I think it's a humongous area that he did not do sufficient to restore the soul of the nation and prevent Trump from being reelected. I think it's a humongous failure. So it's not just a small area. It's a huge
Do you
failure
think
that
you think that like policy was the reason that Kamala didn't win?
No, I think that it was because Biden didn't drop out.
Okay.
Largely.
So then that's not relevant.
What do you mean it's not relevant?
Well, when we're talking about the argument about policy with the Vanguard, and you keep bringing this up, you're
It's on the
admitting that
margin.
that's
No,
but
but
you keep bringing it up as though
Okay.
it's part of the conversation, and it's not.
It's on the margin. Wait. So, in the specific points of policy where they think that they could have gotten $50 minimum wage, they're wrong about that, and I voiced my disagreement on that. But there are multiple reasons that contributed to Kamala's loss. I'm not going to point to a single one. I think the biggest one is Biden's decision to inflation. But in terms of what was in their control, it was Biden's decision to press forward with a campaign that was doomed, or that became doomed. I don't think it was doomed the whole time, but like, which he was not capable of running.
Sure, but this is again, this is what I'm saying is that the policy is not the thing that made it to where Trump won. But you keep bringing that up as though it's part of the conversation, and it's not, because it was more about the campaign and the fact that he continued to run. That was the failure. We're talking about policy in the conversation with the Vanguard.
Election. It's a close election. I think that overall, I would say that Biden's failures are, extend to both his decision not to run or decision to run, and also a fucked up PR and looking like he gave a shit. So I'd say it's both. Now, can I prove that he would have won? But I think that he was very unlikely to win in any respect after that debate. I mean, that debate, I think, was horrific. And I think that his potentiality of winning was probably super low after that, just because of his age and his decline. He wasn't able to shake himself off after that debate at all. So I just don't think that maybe it's overdetermined the ways in which he's going to lose and the reasons why he lost. It's inflation, it's his own capacity. But certainly I would say one reason is the administration's inability to communicate both their victories and to look like they're giving a shit to their people. And that's something that the Biden campaign itself has said. Right?
I've said also that I think that they didn't claim their W's. I've said it over and over. I think that was a huge failure, that they didn't claim their W's. That's very different on the policy points on what it is they failed in getting across, and the fact that I think that this is splitting hairs with the amount of W's that they did get with the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill, so many things that they were getting through, and then to split hairs afterwards and sit there and talk about how he, with the Vanguard, who's saying that his presidency was a failure, talk about how he didn't do this, he didn't do this, he didn't do this. Yeah, I think that is kind of.
I just don't understand. So they're saying stuff. I'm not saying that.
No, but you're arguing the point.
I'm arguing that Biden could have looked like he gave a shit more than he did, and he could have been more engaged domestically, and he could have been.
No, you're arguing that he should have used the bully pulpit more, and that this would have made a big difference.
And he should have. That's a failure of communication.
Okay.
And you can disagree with that, but that's not me buying the whole outlook that Democrats suck, and they're all. That's not my view, and anyone who watches me knows that that's not my view, and so they should give me some fucking trust that I'm not turning into a fucking anti-electoral socialist.
Well, sure, I agree with this. I mean, again, I never took that position, so I don't. You have to keep bringing that up, but I'm saying
okay.
that
Well, I'm just saying like I don't. So I'm literally trying to get something from, and I think you've said that you don't have that right now, but like in that conversation, what did you want me? If you have anything, you know, what did you want me to do that I didn't do? Do you have anything?
yeah. So when the discussion is like about Biden in the way that it was, that the prescription would be that as you're going through the premise that you're like stating that even if you agree with this one premise, you don't agree with the conclusion. That did not come across to me. That felt like
whether it came across. I don't know. I said that he had major legislative accomplishments. I mean I said that Biden did try on student loans a lot of time. I said that Biden was had major policy wins, major legislative wins, and I specified in what ways I thought that he failed and which ways he didn't. So I said what my opinion was, and what
sure,
more
but
did you want
their
me to do?
argument is to build that premise to get to this conclusion. And so I'm saying that if you are helping them build this premise, that is like, again, that's just the way it's
I'm
gonna.
giving my view on some things. So on the notion that Biden could have looked like he gave a shit more, I agree with the Vanguard. On
Sure,
that.
that's not that has nothing to do with. You're
Okay.
asking me for a prescription. I'm giving you the prescription.
The prescription is what? Don't let them build a premise based on a belief that I genuinely hold.
No, that if somebody's building a premise that you don't think leads to the same conclusion, that it doesn't make sense to like help build that premise.
Even if quote, helping build that premise is just stating a view that I actually hold.
Yeah, you can say I agree with the premise, but the argument went on forever on all of the failures that he had.
I think so. Like I was clear in that conversation that I thought that they had major policy wins, that he genuinely tried on student loans, and that he couldn't have pushed bullied Manchin. That was my view. It was clear for anyone who was watching, and my criticism was, I think, calibrated and targeted, and that's the manner in which I agreed. And if people want to read more into that like from those statements in that conversation, that I was somehow assisting an anti-electoralism arc or a Biden always bad or Democrats always bad arc, I think that would be a deranged interpretation. That no one can take that interpretation based on that conversation. That is absurd and unreasonable, I think, as a conclusion. And I think that it is motivated by malice. I don't think it's motivated by a genuine interpretation or recall of the conversation that took place. I think it is malicious.
Okay.
And the prescription that I understood from you is, I honestly can't put into words. Is don't let them use your genuine beliefs to build to a conclusion that you don't yourself hold. Something like that, right?
Kind of, yeah. Like if I can analogize this again, like if I'm thinking of if I'm having a conversation with somebody or they're arguing against another person about whether or not white people are oppressed, and then they start talking about a specific example where a white person got shot by a cop, and I'm listening to a lefty say, no, that never happened, you're lying, blah blah blah. I know that it happened. I know that they're not lying and they're correct. Even if I jump in, I'm like, no, this did happen. Like, that doesn't mean that white people are oppressed, but like, this definitely happened. Like, we can watch the video. It is a real thing. Like, but it doesn't mean that white people are oppressed. This isn't a good example. Like, that's the sort of thing. But when they get bogged down on this one point and you guys are arguing on the same side, it's building that premise that white people are oppressed.
So in this sense, I should have let the audience know, as applied, that I genuinely thought Biden was the best president of my lifetime, right?
Yeah.
But they already fucking know that.
Well,
because I say it all the time.
Okay.
So that's your prescription, to let them know that I thought Biden was the best president of my lifetime?
No, not just that he's the best president of your lifetime, but that, like, again, watching this, I didn't know that you thought that. And then two, the whole thing is you just like arguing their points with them, and that's all I see in this video is you arguing with them on these points. So yeah, it's
so the prescription is to signal something that I signal all the time, which is to say that Biden has been the best president of my lifetime. There are numerous instances where I say this on debates everywhere. The prescription is for me to reassert that in this context of the debate where we're talking about specific points of strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, dude. I mean, like, why? Why
No,
is that the
no,
prescription?
not
How
that-
does that help?
Not that he's
How
the
is
best
that helpful?
president of your lifetime, but that you don't agree that like this
Yes,
actually
that I value him.
demeans
Like, yeah.
his presidency.
So
yeah.
connect the why. Why is that the prescription? Why is that beneficial? When everyone who knows me, who follows me, knows that I carry water for the Biden administration and their accomplishments.
Because that's what the
How is
premises
that-
that they're
connect the
building
why.
towards are. That's what they're
No,
arguing.
no.
Their premises are
they could be
building
arguing
towards
whatever-
this conclusion. That's the conversation that's being had.
They can argue.
What do you mean?
They can argue. Wait. They can argue whatever they want. I'm asking you, why is the prescription for me to reassert something that is obvious to anyone who watches my content, which is that I think Biden wasn't a great president? Why is that the prescription?
Again, because you're helping their argument that he wasn't.
Wait. I'm at so why is it the case that I ought to in that debate say, and by the way, guys, Biden is the best president of my lifetime. He was a good president. Why is that a prescription that makes sense?
Again, because the argument is that it wasn't a successful presidency, that he wasn't a successful president, and you're building their argument. When you're jumping in on their argument and helping their argument, that is what they're building towards. That is the point. Like helping a premise that builds towards the conclusion.
Okay, you're restating that they have a different conclusion, right? They have a conclusion that Biden was a bad president. But I'm asking you, why is it good? Why is it worthwhile for me to reassert what my audience and anyone who watches Live and Learn already knows? But we spend the vast majority of our time talking about how much better Biden is than MAGA and how much better Democrats are than MAGA.
Well, I'm just going to
why is
restate
it
the same
case?
thing. If you think it's fine to help build towards an argument that you disagree with, that's fine.
In what sense am I help? Wait. In what sense am I helping the notion that Biden was a bad president? You're saying that that could be true of a bunch of stuff, right? Like I take the position that Biden had some corrupt pardons, that it was corrupt for him to pardon his son. I take the position that Biden was corrupt to close the border, or at least he did something illegal to close the border illegally in 2024, in the summer of 2024. I think those are all things that I actually believe and things that someone could use to construct a conclusion that I don't agree with. So by that logic, why should I ever criticize Biden ever?
That's not because criticizing Biden doesn't always lead to the conclusion that his presidency was a failure, that he was a bad president, or that.
Okay, so that's.
But that is what that argument was about. That is what they were saying. That is the argument that you are supporting in that conversation.
I wasn't supporting the argument that Biden overall was a bad president.
But you did.
I wasn't. How?
By arguing the premises. That's how debates work, is you have premise, conclusion, and there are premises that lead to a conclusion. That is the conclusion that they're building towards. You are supporting that premise. What do you like? What is confusing about that?
If I, in the context of someone, so for example, if I'm talking to Rob Noor, and Rob Noor's like, and we're having a debate about Biden versus Trump, and he's like, well, Biden did this, and I say something like this, I say, well, Rob, I agree that Biden did some corrupt shit with the pardon of Hunter. I agree with that. But look at how much more corrupt Trump was. You would say I'm playing into his argument there?
I'm sorry, restate that again.
Okay, so consider a conversation that actually happened where we're discussing Biden versus Trump, me and versus Rob Noor. And Rob Noor says, Biden did a corrupt pardon of Hunter Biden when he promised he wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And then in the context of that conversation, he brings it up to me and says, what do you have to say about this, Pisco? And I'm like, I agree that was corrupt and he shouldn't have done that and that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say but then I'm like, but look at what Trump did. It's worse. Would you be like, oh, you're helping him construct an argument against Biden?
No, you just gave what I'm saying. Whereas like if Rob Noor is arguing against somebody else, and during that whole thing, you're continuing to support his argument that what Biden did was corrupt because he's trying to make the argument that his whole presidency was corrupt.
But
that would be very different.
If we had a panel that was specifically not that I would ever do this panel, but if we had a panel on the corruption of the Biden pardons of Hunter Biden, and we brought up Rob Noor, people from both sides to argue the point, was it corrupt or not? And the specific proposition was it was corrupt. I would be with Rob saying it was corrupt. Would you say in that context that well, maybe the whole thing optically is bad to do, but like if it's my position that Biden did something wrong here, I'm not going to hold that back. I'm going to say it, right? Why would I not say what
Yeah,
I
no, I
feel
also
were
thought it was
mistakes with
correct.
Biden?
Yeah, no. So
So why would I not say what I feel were flaws and problems with Biden if you're just going to come up and say, well, you're supporting their premise and conclusion just because you say something you agree with? You get me? Like, you could say that anytime if I'm on the phone or I'm on a call with someone whose overall conclusion is that Biden was a bad president or something, and I say something negative about Biden, you could say the same thing.
yes,
You're
but
building their conclusion.
yes, but I think that if they're talking about whether or not the Biden presidency, like whether or not Biden was more corrupt than Trump, and you help build that argument, I think just saying you agree with it is one thing. But we're talking about like actually arguing the points to build that. Whereas if somebody's using that as a point, I might say, yeah, I agree with that. But that's not relevant to like, the conclusion that he's now more corrupt because of X, Y, and Z. And then
Yeah, but
like
if we're
continuously
specifically talking about like, well, how did Biden succeed or fail with respect to his strategy and the mansion stuff and all this stuff and this Green Lantern theory of whatever, like, if we're having a conversation that's tailored to Hutch's desire, which was to have a conversation about the ways in which there's unfair criticisms of Democrats, like, we're having a conversation in the weeds about fair and unfair criticisms of Democrats. And I'm going to be like, okay, Hutch, you have a point here. I'll mention this. This is an unfair criticism of Biden. And to the extent that I agree with Vanguard, I'm going to be like, okay, you have a point about this. Like, we're having a tailored conversation. And so I think the prescription, well, you have to make it clear that you support Biden as a prescription. That's so fucking lame, dude. And that is what you just said.
I'm sorry, what is it that I just said?
You said that the prescription was to make clear to the audience that the audience know that I support Biden. I don't agree with the conclusion that Biden was bad.
Well, I've given a number of like prescriptions based on the different circumstances that we're talking about.
Okay.
But overall, yes, I wouldn't continue to like argue a point to lead to a conclusion that I disagree with. I wouldn't say this is a supporting point. Let me help support this point that they're using to lead to this different conclusion. I might say that I agree with it at some point, but that's very different than like continuing to argue it. Yeah.
I kind of like, people think that I plan out these conversations in like dialogue trees.
No, I don't
really
think
do that. And so like when someone says something like, I'm actually considering being like, do I agree that Biden had unfair criticism with respect to mansion? Like, yeah, he had some unfair criticism. Oh, but could Biden have done what the Vanguard is saying, is like stand on business more and be more assertive and be a better advocate for his own policy? Yeah, I do agree. Like, I'm not thinking in terms of like, what is the Vanguard's, and maybe you're sitting there, that's the prescription, think about like what the ultimate aim is. I'm having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the process of having the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about what the discussion is about. And I'm kind of not like, if someone brings up a conclusion I disagree with and like, therefore Biden was bad, I'm going to say something about that. I'm going to have some words. I'm going to talk about that. And so I'm not as worried like that the audience is going to be hooked. Like, what is the fear here? Is the fear that they're going to raffle stomp us? What is the fear? Like, what am I preventing by signaling stronger in the moment that I support Biden?
What are you preventing by signaling strong? The conclusion of the argument is that like the idea that like, because again, you're saying for your audience, but you're streaming to your audience is what, a quarter of the audience at the time. Like, you're saying, oh, my audience knows this, I've said this to my audience, but your audience is a quarter of the fucking people listening at the time, right?
Vanguard.
Well, the Vanguard might have clipped it and put it up as well, but I'm saying
or
that
live and learn.
Yeah, like all of the live and learn audiences are watching this at the time, and then
yeah, the live and learn audience who's lib,
right?
The live and learn audience who loves Biden,
and you have a socialist on there. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Who loves Biden?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
All right, I mean, we've got in circles, but
yeah.
I think this is the kind of shit that like frustrates me, Tom, to be honest with you. Like, I'll get into this conversation and it just feels like I'm boxing with ghosts, where there's some virtue signal that's being asked for. I'm not saying virtue signal necessarily is a bad thing. Like maybe virtue signaling can be a good thing, but like there's some kind of virtue signal that is being requested, and that's either to say communism is bad, or to say that Biden is good, that you should vote for Biden. And I think to the extent that there is a virtue signal that's being requested, I think that people should know enough about our show to know that like we don't need those virtue signals. Like our bona fides should be clear that we live and bleed to stop Trump and to promote the Democrats over the Republicans. We're liberals, even, and I don't think it's necessarily contradictory with Econoboys coming out as a socialist. I think he's also a liberal as well as a socialist. But so like this fear of us being tankies or us being Marxist Leninists or us, like this is just not real. No one's actually afraid that we're going to turn this way or that we're going to tolerate this kind of anti-electoral rhetoric. No one's actually scared of that, dude.
Okay. Yeah,
it's all made up. This is all fake. There's nothing here.
I'm not making that argument, so I don't.
Okay.
I don't know, but I am making the argument that optically that can be the way it looks.
Oh fuck! What time is it? It's 1. How you been otherwise? Can we end on a good note? I don't want to end on this sour note with you.
Yeah, good. I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
everybody's like running around saying that you're getting invaded by other communities. Do you
Communities.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. We made a new rule in our Discord and subreddit. I don't really like to moderate in terms of like substance.
Yeah.
But we're doing it now, and so you should not consider either my Discord or my subreddit to be places to have like drama stuff. I think it's bad. I think it's toxic.
Okay.
And it's nothing but negativity. So yeah, in terms of invasions, like I want the discussion to center around like the stream and to center around like the politics. And I am unfortunately now going to have to take a harder line to prevent like this from being ground zero for a bunch of bullshit that I don't care to engage in.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through it. Actually, I heard you the other day I was in your chat. You said something about the Thomas Fair thing. Thomas Fair is a very old thing from my community. Like that's been like an emote and like a very old meme in my community before people started doing the fucking Reddit memes. So
I heard a story, but it's ingenious because
that I
people don't
planned
know
the
it's a
whole
meme,
thing so that I could.
No, right. So like so people don't know it's a meme.
Mhm.
And so like anyone who encounters the meme in the wild is just gonna think that you're a very fair guy.
Yeah. Yes, it's just gonna look like it's
So
gonna
it's,
be a bunch of
it's
people saying
genius.
Tom's the smartest, Tom's the most handsome, Tom's the most fair.
Handsome,
Yeah.
is fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works out.
What's up with so Mantis really supports you. I
Mhm.
always see her like singing your graces. Like I don't really understand is so she's like a big support of yours.
Yeah, she's been in my community for a long time, and she's one of the few that actually likes to jump on shows and argue with people.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she's always running around debating people and fighting. I don't know if she debates anything about me or related to me, but but generally, she will run around and debate people with stuff related to Destiny a lot.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for the fall? Big plans?
No, not really. Like hopefully,
Are you on the West Coast or East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta. So yeah, East Coast.
Atlanta.
I do want to eventually start doing more video essays. I have documentaries that I've been working on. I have one on a channel called Terminally Online Media. The initials spell Tom, Terminally Online Media.
Wow.
It's another channel. But yeah, I want to work more on documentaries and then probably transition my streaming channel, Tomfoolery Show, to doing panels in the future. And so I may just do panels on Tomfoolery Show.
Did you used to do panels?
Oh yeah. I did panels for a long time. Never mind. I can't say this, but yeah, I used to do panels, and I'm gonna go back to doing panels. Probably like a Piers Morgan version, where It's very like 3 or 4
Hell yeah.
people, very highly
Hang on,
moderated.
hang on.
Yeah, hang on. Hello.
Okay, last question for you. Condiment for a burger. What's your top sauce for
Mayonnaise,
condiment?
mayonnaise and ketchup
Man.
all day.
No mustard, no ranch.
I mean, I don't mind mustard, but generally gonna use a lot of ketchup and mayonnaise. Love it. I heard somebody sent me a clip of you talking to somebody. I don't know who they were, but you were saying
Yeah.
like, who would you rather get a beer with? I think Rob Noor or Tomfoolery, and they're like, I don't know who they are. It's like, what is
I
that?
would get a beer. I would get a beer with Rob.
Yeah, I probably
I
would.
would
I would get a beer
with
with
you.
Rob over me as well.
I'm not saying I would get a beer with you. I haven't really thought about it over.
Yeah, I
over
think
either.
he would be
But, like,
fun. He's very loud.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about, like, for whatever reason, I don't know if you remember Chank's 3 rules or whatever, the 3 rules of Chank, which was like when we agree we unite or something, when we disagree we fight,
Mhm.
and afterwards we have to get a beer with each other. Those are like the 3 rules of Chank. I'm a big like let's grab beer with people, but there's a select category of like I will get drinks sometimes with like people who are MAGA supporters. I have friends who are conservative.
Yeah, I
But
live in Atlanta,
there's
so
some
almost all
line.
of my friends are,
Yeah.
are conservative. Yeah.
There's some line that I won't cross, I think. So people like Jack Posobiec, not that I've ever been invited to or had the opportunity. People like Alex Jones, these kinds of people. There's a line, a threshold. I don't know what it is, but say what you want. Rob is not on that other side of the threshold. He's some distance away from it, even now, which is
Yep.
wild because he's been super bad faith with me. And yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe if I thought about it more, I'd come to a different conclusion. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
And you haven't. I would say you're also someone I'd get a beer with.
Well, yeah. No, I've always liked you, and like when you were in DGG, and people would always hate on you. I've never been like much of a DGGer, but I was.
No worries. If you,
I
if you
definitely
want to criticize, that's cool.
No, I was saying I was more on your side most of the time. People would always say that you were too autistic, but then people have the same criticism of me in the way that I debate, and so I think I'm always like, no, I like the way he debates. Like this is exactly the way that I debate as well. So I'm on board with it.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, much love to you. You're not live, are you?
No, I'll go live later.
Okay.
I had actually just woken up when you messaged me, so I was.
Oh shit! I didn't message you. I fucking.
Or sorry,
Don't
my bad.
act
Yeah,
like
not when you messaged me. Yeah, when you said when I messaged you or posted in your chat. Yeah.
All right, brother. Hey, thank you so much for chatting. Always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Good luck with your co-host Epstein. Later.
Thank you.